Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for this. Today's discussion, we're going to focus on the first-gen experience in the law school admissions process. I'm joined today by three great friends of mine at different law schools. And so really going to talk about a variety of topics from the very beginning of just undergrad, how to plan for undergrad, why you're undergrad, the application process, and then the experience in actual law school. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with introductions. And so I'll have Paulette introduce herself first. So with name, school, where you're currently working, what your position is, and where you're from.
Sure. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting us. My name is Paulette Palafox. I'm the Associate Dean of Admissions at Golden Gate University School of Law in San Francisco, California. I've been at this school for 4.5 years, but I actually have been in law school admissions for probably 13 years. I started at a different law school, and I have a variety of undergraduate admissions experience, nonprofit organization, but came back to law school admissions because I really enjoy it.
Thank you. Oscar?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us and watching this video. My name is Oscar Sanchez. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at LMU Loyola Law School. I have been at Loyola now going on almost 8 years. Before that, I worked in domestic violence representation, representing victims of domestic violence before Family Court and USCIS. I am from Los Angeles, and I'm in law school admissions because I know that there are a lot of people like myself, first generation students, who are interested in this career path, and I'm hoping to be able to help these students get to this career.
Thank you. Danielle?
Hi, everybody. Thank you again for having us on today. My name is Danielle Saavedra. I am the Assistant Dean of Admissions at Texas Tech University School of Law in Lubbock, Texas. I also serve as the Director of First Generation Resources here at Texas Tech. I've been at the law school and my staff employment for 8 years, and before that I was a student, so I did graduate from Texas Tech. I went on to do some family law and criminal defense work before fully committing myself to the admissions career. And the reason that I'm here in admissions, I went to law school initially because I wanted to help people like so many of us do. And then I realized in my role through admissions, I could actually go out and find 150, 160 new people who want to help others every single year. So it's been very fulfilling.
No, thank you for that. Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. And yeah, no, I did. I actually also started in the admissions world where I went to law school as well. And I think there's just a natural transition. Many of us that I've spoken to that went to law school and started admissions, we usually we're doing tours or panels, and that kind of sparked the interest, at least for me. I don't know, Danielle, that was your case when you were a law student, or Oscar when you were in law school. But yeah, that's definitely something that kind of sparked my interest when I was going through that. The first question that I really want to get started on is a common question that I get from students that are starting their undergraduate career, particularly first-gen students, just because, you know, a lot of times we're looking at what makes the most financial sense, or where we can get admitted or scholarship-wise. Sometimes the best route for students to take is to start at a community college and then transfer to a four-year university. But then, of course, the concern is, when I apply to law schools, how is that going to affect, if at all, my opportunities, or how do law schools view that transfer from a community college to a four-year university? So Paula, if you don't mind starting us off about what your advice or recommendation is for students that are considering pursuing that route or that are currently in community college and planning on transferring to a four-year university.
Sure, happy to answer that. So first, depending on where you are starting at the moment, if you are still looking to apply to colleges, I want to separate this out just a little bit. I used to work at the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, and what I realized working there was that there are a lot of funds for students available through varying scholarship organizations like HSF, the Gates Scholarship, tons and tons of them that you could research. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because sometimes I think your mind automatically thinks that community college may be the less expensive route. But if you're a recipient of one of these scholarships, or a four-year institution has funds to provide to you, the out-of-pocket expense could be equitable to, or even less than in some cases, than just going the community college route. So you want to make sure you give yourself as many options as possible. Don't stop yourself from applying to places because of what you perceive the barrier to be, because you may not know that's the case. And so wait till you have all your options in front of you to make the best one. Now, if you are in community college, I think you have a great opportunity because you're in a position now to really get the general elective courses out of the way, really find your footing, determine how you're balancing out things like work and school, which many of the students that I have interacted with are doing both when they are pursuing community college. And that understanding that organizational skills are really what they should be focusing on, as well as maintaining strong GPAs, because that'll impact where you're able to transfer to. Now, one thing that I think is important is not to sacrifice your GPA for over involvement in community activities. And I think that's important to note, because further down the end of the line, when we are computing, or the Law School Admissions Council is computing your cumulative GPA up through the conferral of your bachelor's degree, it counts all of the courses you took. Even if it was a course you took and you didn't like it and you just did it to get it out of the way, if you had a C in that course, it's going to count it towards your calculation. So those are things to be mindful of. You really don't know what you'll pursue in terms of graduate school, but if you have law school in mind, just make sure that you are always putting your school first and foremost in terms of importance.
Yeah, no, definitely. Any Danielle or Oscar, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, Danielle, just wanted to say, at LMU Loyola LA, and just a lot of the law schools, we see a lot of applicants coming in with a couple of years of community college. And so, to answer the question, does it affect my application? No, but what, as Paulette was pointing out, maintaining your grades throughout the entire time that you are an undergrad, including community college, is going to be super important. And one thing that the admissions committee will look for is that transition from community college to the four-year institution. So sometimes we see students who might have a dip in their grades after transferring to the four-year institution. So it's super important that you maintain that strong GPA that you have at the community college once you enter at the four-year institution. If there is a dip, sometimes that happens. Sometimes we're in new situations, new environments, and of course that may affect your performance in class. You want to include an addendum to help explain why you had that dip, and to help give the committee a fuller picture of your overall situation. But that being said, just try to keep your grades as strong as possible as you go into that four-year institution.
Yes, the only thing I would add, we were actually having a discussion about it today in our office. For students who in their high school years decide that they would like to do dual credits with a community college so that they can graduate from high school with their high school diploma and their associate's degree, those grades, as you've just heard from both of my peers here, those grades are going to count. So we have had some students who did some of those dual credits, courses in high school. They came to the law school ready to go and didn't realize that those were on their transcripts. So if you are in a position where you are still in high school and you're considering that, that is just something to keep in mind. It's by no means us telling you not to do that, but those grades will count as well. The other thing is, if you do decide to do your associate's degree in high school, get that taken care of, you are starting college as a junior. It does make it a little bit difficult kind of resume building, but we were actually, the reason we were looking at it today was we were going through a resume of a stellar superstar student that we have at our institution who was involved with their community throughout high school and continued that same involvement in college. And so they were able to include it on their resume without any gaps or very short terms to put on there. They also kind of immediately got involved when they got to college, so that there were some student orgs that they had established themselves in. So just another thing to think about kind of on the community college aspect. I know some students are pursuing it again to save money, to save time, whatever the case may be. Just be mindful that we are going to be able to see kind of everything. And if you have a direction that you'd like to go, or you have a direction you're considering, definitely reach out to one of us, reach out to any of our admissions colleagues. Really, we're here to help. And sometimes that is to help you figure out what your next step is going to be.
No, thank you for that. And Danielle, what you just said reminded me. So like when someone, for example, like if they did take, early college classes in high school and maybe they didn't do as well as they wanted to because they're younger and then once they got to undergrad, they did a lot better. Yes, those grades count towards the GPA calculation, but do you all, as reviewers, when you're going through that, do you make that distinction of, okay, yes, these grades are a little bit lower, but they were still in high school and we're going to focus maybe a little bit or put more weight on the undergraduate grades? Do you guys make that distinction?
I think in our holistic review, we definitely do. At the end of the day, though, we are having to report their cumulative GPA to the
Mhm.
American Bar Association. And so that is going to be something that our committee considers. However, if there are, we're able to see the grade trends on their credential assembly service report, and we'll be able to see, oh, when the student was doing those dual credit classes and they were younger, they were a little bit lower. When they got to college and kind of got their footing, we can see that they've progressed as a student. We can see it in their writing. We can see it in their letters of rec, in their resume, in the way that they put their application together. Those are all going to be things that we're taking into account. So yes.
Gotcha. Paula and Oscar, you have anything to add to that?
Was just gonna say, write an addendum. I know I think it's best to ask the schools that you're applying to whether they prefer an addendum. Some schools like the least amount of documents in your application, and some schools want a full picture of your overall application. And so remember, sometimes Danielle's not reading your file. Sometimes it might be a professor, a writing professor that doesn't have the wherewithal or the know that you were in high school when you were doing community college courses. So it's important to write an addendum. It could be short, paragraph, just explaining your situation that will explain that weakness or discrepancy in your file.
Thank you for that. Oscar, I'm gonna stick with you. There's probably maybe one of the most common questions that we get asked as admissions people. It is, do I need to major in anything specific for law school? Does it matter what I major in?
No, it doesn't matter. That being said, you want to do a major that calls you, that tests and that helps improve your writing skills, your research skills, your analytical skills, your critical thinking skills. A major that makes you better prepared for law school. So that can be different things. We see applicants that have STEM majors. We see applicants that have humanities majors. We see applicants that have arts majors. So you definitely want to take classes that challenge you so that you are ready to take on the next step of law school. So luckily, there isn't a required course or major that you have to take to get into a program. Although we do see a ton of poli-sci majors and English majors. You don't have to be married to being one of those majors to get into one of our programs.
Yeah, no, definitely. I started as a poli-sci major because I didn't know what it was, but someone that was going to law school told me that that's what I should do, and I hated it, and I quickly switched when I found out that it didn't matter. But so you might have some students that say, okay, that's what admissions people say generally, but maybe I don't know if they mean it 100% or not. Or they might say maybe, okay, I don't have to major in anything specific, but maybe these majors might give me an advantage in law school, like a pre-law major, criminal justice, or something like that. Paulette, do you feel like, or what is your advice with students say, do I feel like I need to major in pre-law or something close to that?
Sure. It's interesting because over the years that I have been doing this, you'll find that the inspiration for a person to go to law school is different. I mean, for the most part, they want to help others. That's a really common theme, but in the way they want to help others. And so for that, I mean, you may have, let's say for you, for example, majored in political science, potentially a law degree will help you in, a political career, or you want to be a commentator on, a news network or what have you. But I've met a lot of students that were former actors who said, and dancers and artists and musicians that said, we need to help our fellow artists, support them and represent them and make sure things like intellectual property with their creations are safe. And so when I was living in Los Angeles, we had a lot of people that were inspired to go to law school because of those reasons. Also, on the IP framework, you're thinking about people who create patents, patent attorneys. They want to work in the sciences, emerging markets, right? Like Silicon Valley, et cetera. So they want to work in startups and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, things like that. So it's not always about what you see on TV in terms of defending someone or prosecuting someone because of a major crime of some sort. You know, like a violent crime, what you see on TV. I watch a lot of Law and Order because it's fun, but to watch. But you know, I think the idea is it's not always about that. And I also think there are a lot of people who don't want to be in front of the scenes. They want to be behind the scenes. So they are interested in, as strange as it may sound, they really love tax law because of how the variety of different ways they can interpret various tax laws. And so they spend a lot of time doing legal research. So with that common theme, like Oscar was saying, like you were saying, the idea of making sure that you take classes that do supplement your learning. Whereas if you are an arts person or a science person or whatever, that you are taking classes that will allow you to be able to be a strong writer, sit and study and read for a long time, and be great at analysis. Those are really key for us.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
Just a concern that I've heard from a lot of students that were maybe not poli-sci or English majors, that they feel that they're already behind going in. Oh, I'm a math major or social work major, or I mean, even a dance, theater, arts major, whatever the case may be. And the simple fact of the matter is they're not at all. Law school, when you get started, everybody's kind of coming in, even the people who had highly specific pre-law majors. It's a very new experience for literally everybody walking into the building, regardless of what your background was. And so just to reassure folks that are choosing to study different things in college, really follow your passion, whatever it is that, like Oscar said, I love that, whatever is calling to you. Study that, because typically if you're studying something you're passionate about, it shows in your grades. And then when you get to law school, you'll figure it out with everybody else.
Definitely, and even after law school, it takes that long for some people. So, I mean, that's how I ended up in admission. So, but yeah, so something that okay, a student we're in college now. We figured out what we want to major in. The other concern was because I didn't even think about this when I was an undergrad, was what do you do during the summers while you're in undergrad to kind of gain experience? Because obviously a lot of people talk about having extracurriculars during the school year, but not as much discussion on what do you do during the summers. And so, Danielle, I'll stick with you. Do you have any recommendations or advice on what students should be thinking about? For those that can, of course, have that freedom in the summer to get involved in something, what kind of activities you recommend to prepare them for law school, or, to prepare them for the application process to kind of enhance the application?
Absolutely. So I feel like I was a little bit late in my decision of that I'm going to go to law school. So I didn't really think about it too much in my undergrad summers. So I was working at, a breakfast place in my hometown. I was a hostess. I was a barista. I was working at a daycare, just really whatever I could do to have money so that I could go to school the next year. And let me tell you what, that is a completely valid experience to put on your resume. If you are working and it is not at all related to law, that's okay. That's okay. And it's going to be seen as a valid, celebrated thing by the rest of us to see that you are putting in the work for your education, putting in the work to make money for your household, whatever the case may be. For those that do have the opportunity to do more legal, guided experiences, whether that is an internship or an externship, the difference there, the internship, you are generally hopefully getting paid. The externship, you are paying to get class credit. If you do have an opportunity, that is not necessarily going to be weighted like the bump on your resume that's going to get you into law school, but it will be a helpful experience to you individually to see, do I even enjoy what lawyers do? Or, you, for example, you spend a summer working and interning in a criminal defense office and realize you know, like Paulette said, I don't want to be in court. So the next summer, maybe you're able to work in a probate office or doing wills and trusts and things like that. And you realize you enjoy working with people, but maybe not going to court. And so those are really valuable opportunities if you're able to take them. If you're not, again, don't feel like you're behind. There are people who decide that they're going to law school later in life and they've never had an inkling of legal experience in their entire background. And that's okay. That's what makes law school so fun, is that there's such a diverse pool of experience coming in, from age to, you know, type of background to type of work to type of legal interest. It's what keeps all of our schools very interesting. And the conversations at our school really interesting. And so I think that if you know you're going into college, you really want to go to law school, spending your summers working on skills that are going to be useful to you in law school: professionalism, writing, research, working with others, opportunities for public speaking, if that's something that you're interested in. Those were all, you know, qualities and jobs that are going to be helpful to you, that might be interesting to the admissions committee that's reviewing your file. But again, if you are somebody who's in the position where you need to work to make money, more power to you.
No, definitely. And I think what you said is also, you know, correct, Danielle, talking about sometimes just talking to an attorney just to see what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. Because for me, the goal was, since I was in high school, to go to law school, but then by the time I graduated from college, I was like, wait, I don't actually know what a lawyer does on a day-to-day basis. I don't know what that looks like. That was part of the reason why I took a year between undergrad and law school. The other part was because I was like, oh, I didn't realize how time-consuming this application process was, and I don't think I'm ready yet. Because I started like in the spring semester of my senior year in college. And so for you, for Paulette, Oscar, or Danielle, obviously completely advise against that. So for you, when do you advise students, or how much time do you typically tell students, like, this is how much time you want to give yourself to prepare for law school, or to put yourself in a position where you're really maximizing your opportunities on where you can get admitted? What does that timeline look like, Oscar?
I just want to kind of touch on what Danielle was saying. Isn't that like such a first gen experience, like having to work in undergrad?
Yep.
Our parents are not people that are making, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Our expenses are going to be the same as me and some people that do have those sort of parents. And so we have to work. And so, like Danielle said, I had to work all of undergrad. And so what I tried to do was I tried to get jobs at the law firms. So I know that you have to realize that you are maybe a person that's bilingual, or you're a person that has a skill set that can be valuable to some of these law firms. Even if you're going in as a receptionist, it's somewhere to start. Don't limit yourself to jobs because you feel like you don't have the skill set. You're in school, you're in college. You are employable in these sort of positions, and this is a good gateway to the legal field. It gives you an idea of what it is to work in the legal field. Granted, like Danielle said, you might not like it, but that's not the only field of law there is. There's hundreds of fields of law, right? So as long as you kind of get that experience, I think those are always a plus. Another thing I want to add is join the Phi Alpha Delta organizations on campus. Join the pre-law organizations on campus so that you can get some exposure if this is something you're even remotely interested in. You don't have to join in as a president or a secretary, just so that you can get some information that's really helpful, so you can start meeting attorneys. I'm sure that these organizations have coffee chats with attorneys, panels with attorneys. This is a way, if you're unable to find a job at a law firm, for you to get connected with people that are in the legal field. You want to make sure that you are kind of exposing yourself to the legal field as much as possible. Talk to your pre-law advisor if there's one at your university. You want to do it as early as possible. And kind of going back to your question, Josue, earlier is always better. The biggest, I think, biggest part of the application is going to be the LSAT exam, the law school admissions test. And so you want to start thinking about that process sooner than later. I would say in your sophomore year, or even in your junior year, if you can just start thinking about it, taking some online questions that are sample questions for the LSAT. start really getting your brain thinking about this application process. I believe it really ramps up in your junior year, sometimes in the summer of your senior years when students really ramp up, so that your application is in our various systems no later than December 31st, so that you have early consideration in the application process. So that means your application, your exams are all taken, your letters of recommendations are complete, your personal statements are complete, and their applications are in the systems ready to be reviewed. So start the process early. Start in your junior year, start in your sophomore year, just exploring what law school is. We're going to start going to your various universities in the next few weeks, meeting you in person. Come to the events that your career development offices or your pre-law organizations are hosting, so that you can start talking to us to get an idea of what this process is like. So I know I answered that kind of big, but really just start early. Just start
No,
as
no,
early as possible and get going.
no, I appreciate that. And I'm glad you said too, like internships, jobs can also help you figure out, what you don't like. And that's exactly what I tell students, those types of opportunities are great to figure out what you like and what you don't want to do. So like the firm I worked at did some workers' comp cases, and you coming into law school, that's absolutely what I did not want to do from the work that I did. But I had a better idea of like what I did want to do, so that can kind of help, even though most students change their mind throughout their time in law school. But it's good to have a general idea, I think, when it comes to what you would at least are interested in talking about or going into in law school. But Paul, do you have anything to add about that aspect?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is allowing me to reflect back on my time as an undergrad. And initially I did have aspirations to attend law school, and I did not. I ended up pursuing doctorate in education instead, and I ended up working in law schools, and that was
Now you're professor
what I
now.
was meant to do, right? I was meant to work in the law school and to me not go to
Yeah,
law school.
yeah.
But as I reflect back on the advice that I had been given when I was looking at varying majors, the one thing that's really important, aside from the advice that you're getting about how to make your writing skills better and pursue jobs, was the idea that I was just, as a first gen, so amazed and wide-eyed open, eyes wide open, and taking in just the atmosphere of college, and realizing for me, I was really excited because my undergraduate school had this really high 50% of the students were students of color. But when you don't realize when you get there that means the other half of the students are not students of color. And so the acclimation during that first year, my interest in, there's an education you get outside of your education, and that's like people building skills and social skills and learning about things that you never thought about before, right? Like, and so I think if you're in a position, for any students that are still learning about this new life of college, that the idea is hone the organizational skills now, because I wanted to take advantage of every opportunity to get to meet different people from every walks of life, and clubs and meetings and going to the coffee shop and things like that. And so I think one of the things to integrate in that I've honed later in life is the idea of saying everything has its place in the calendar. Every single thing, even that coffee break, even that dance or party or whatever you're going to attend on the weekend, whatever, you have to be able to fill your calendar with class times, study times, break times, exercise times, if you're an athlete, if, whatever. And I think that even gets you even more, better able to do what Oscar's telling you. And that's start early, because you're thinking, oh my God, I have so much stuff to do now. How do I fit it in? But if you are organized, calendar things, and then you say, I have to start looking at law schools early or the LSAT early, you can fit in times where you're able to do that. And that's going to be a skill that you'll live with forever, because you think you're busy now, but as soon as you graduate, you don't get summer breaks off anymore. You're working, you're researching, you're doing your legal analysis, whatever it is that's happening in law school and then after law school. So I think the organizational component is really key.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And also, as first gen students, a lot of times we don't necessarily have the ability or the opportunities, or like Oscar said, most of us have to work while we're in undergrad. to be able to afford just basic things in undergrad. So we don't necessarily have access to private resources when it comes to preparing applications, or we might not know, attorneys to read over personal statements, or just generally not necessarily just attorneys, but just generally have someone that we can say, hey, can you read this for me? What resources do you all recommend for a first gen student to utilize, whether it's within their university or outside of their university, as they're preparing their law school application, to make sure that it's the best version it can be? And whoever would like to start can go ahead.
Can I jump in real quick and
ahead.
tell you what I'll tell you not to do is have attorneys read your essay? Tell me if you agree with me, Danielle, because
do.
they don't know why they got into law school.
True, that's true.
So you need to talk to people who read essays for a living. Okay, that's what I
Yes.
wanted to say.
I will agree with Paulette because I did not know what I was doing. My mom was a social worker, so she worked kind of law adjacent, and she encouraged me to have one of the judges read it. He's like, "Oh, this is great." Let me tell you what, as an admissions person who reads personal statements now, it was really not very good. I mean, it was fine written. Grammatically, it was fine, but golly, it was boring. I use my personal statement as an example of what not to do in most workshops that I do. Where I should have taken it was to the writing center of my university, because they have a ton of folks that work there who work with students doing personal statements for graduate programs, medical school, law school, internships. They know a boring personal statement when they see it. The writing center at Tech on the main campus at Texas Tech, they actually work brainstorming sessions with the students so that they can figure out what they're even going to write about, so that they don't waste all this time kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall. So the writing center is where you need to start. If you have a pre-law advisor or a pre-law group in your school, the pre-law advisor is somebody who should look at it. If you're comfortable with the pre-law group doing like writing workshops where everybody like kind of reads their personal statements or tries to ascertain in a couple of sentences the point of what you were trying to make, that's also a really great way to kind of get to read a bunch of personal statements, because once you have a chance to read through 10, 20, 30 of these things, you as an individual will be able to assess what reads like a good personal statement and what is just kind of okay. But golly, the writing center, please start there.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something I wish I would have done. And I think that's the biggest thing that I tell students that are first gen, especially, don't be afraid to ask for help. And I think for me, when I was going through the process for an undergrad, part of it was probably ego, but most of it was also like I was just used to figuring it out by myself. And so I didn't want to ask for help, or I felt like that was something that like it showed some level of maybe weakness. But take advantage of those resources. And now I tell everyone, like, you're paying for it, so might as well take advantages of those resources that your university may offer. Oscar or Paula, you have anything else to add about resources within or outside of the university? If not, all right.
No, I mean, I think this is a good resource.
Yeah.
I will say acclimating to speaking to people like those who work in the admissions office, I think sometimes we can be seen as gatekeepers, when obviously I hope you can tell that we're here to try to help as many people as possible. So if you have to practice going out there and reaching out, like I have professors call me and say, Paula, I'm going to do this thing with my class. What do you think? I'm like, what do I know about a class? I know about admissions. But I think that goes to show you that even faculty who are lawyers, right, are willing to collaborate and work together. So have confidence in yourself that you're collaborating, you're starting these collaborations. So asking for help is really that, with that in mind, is you're looking to seek collaboration to get input to make yourself better, right? A better product for yourself.
Yeah, no, definitely. Something that I often have to discuss with first-gen students is, kind of having discussion with parents, especially if they're immigrant parents like mine. And my parents, I'm gonna call out my parents, they're used to it by now, I do it all the time. But that was a conversation that I had to have when I was deciding whether to go, take a year or 2 years in between undergrad and law school. And their mentality was, well, if you don't go straight in, you're never gonna go back, and it's just you're gonna forget about it. And so I had to have that discussion, like, no, this is why I need to take some time in between. And I still compromised. I should have done 2. I only did 1 year in between. But for students that are kind of in that um, situation of not necessarily with parents, but maybe, but they're trying to decide, should I go straight in? Should I take time in between? I'm not sure what I should do or how, if it benefits me at all to take time in between undergrad and law school. What is your advice for someone that's in that situation? Whoever would like to speak up, feel free.
I think it's a very personal decision. This year, our incoming class, the median age was, entering age was 25. So it tells me that the majority of our students, or at least half of them, or the middle, whatever. A lot of students are coming in with at least a few years out of law school. And so it really depends. And so I think students that are coming back to law school after a few years being outside of undergrad have a little bit of more desire to attend law school. I think sometimes we get stuck in the, okay, now I'm done with this, what's the next step? Because we're told you have to get all the degrees to get the best job possible. And sometimes that's not the best idea, because you may not actually want to be part of a particular career or path, right? So I think it's good for students to take a year or 2 to really discover what they want to do with their next step, and within that gap year, you can discover that, be it working at a law firm or working wherever, traveling, really getting opening your eyes to the bigger world outside of your undergrad. And I speak from personal experience. I went to law school right out of undergrad, and I sometimes look back and wish I would have done a couple of years before I jumped into this experience, not because I didn't enjoy the work that I did or the work that I do now, but because I think we can grow so much between undergrad and starting a law degree, and really desiring that program, and really going in 100%.
Thank you. Anyone else? Cool. But yes, no, I agree, Oscar. Our second year class now, the age range was between 20 and 55. In this current first year class now, or new first year class, is 20 and 35. So definitely, whenever in life you decide or to go to law school, or you feel ready to go, that's what I tell students. It's up to you at the end of the day. It's an investment in yourself, in your career, and you're the one that's going to be committing the time, the money, the stress, and so you got to make sure that you're ready for it, and not that necessarily anyone else influence that decision. For first gen students, especially, for me, the approach I took when I graduated, and I was like, all right, let me figure out, how do I figure out what a lawyer actually does day to day? I just Googled a bunch of immigration attorneys in my area and like email them all. I don't think that's the best approach. It's an approach, but I don't know if it's the most effective, because I think out of the 30 that I emailed, only 2 responded and 1 just said no. So, but for you, for someone that doesn't know any attorneys, what do you recommend? How do you make that connection? How do you figure out, who can I reach out to, or what resources are available for me to start making these connections? Because as you all know, especially in the legal profession in general, networking is such a big aspect of it too. And so as first gen, we're already kind of starting at a disadvantage when it comes to that. So prior to law school, how can they start making those connections? And Danielle, I'll start with you.
Sure. Honestly, I would encourage you to start here with us. Each of us, have access to hundreds, if not thousands, of alumni from each of our institutions that practice in a very wide variety of legal topics and geographic areas. So if you're somebody, for example, in New Mexico, and you're like, oh, I really want to do XYZ type of law out here, contact the school in New Mexico. Contact us. We're right there across the border, really close to New Mexico. We have a ton of alumni in that area, and I can kind of figure out, talking back and forth with you, oh, it sounds like you're interested in sports management law. Actually, I have an alum, and then I can reach out to the alum and do an e-introduction. And that's a really great way for you to not only gain the confidence of reaching out to the admissions office, so now you have somebody to help you with your application, but now I've vouched for you basically and put you directly into contact with one of our alumni in that same area. And usually there is a better response rate if they understand why they are being contacted and if they see a name that they recognize.
No, definitely. Paula, Oscar, anything?
Yeah, I'll say that another thing, if you are still in college currently, then reach out to your pre-law advisors, or everyone sort of has a different structure at every undergraduate school, but sometimes they'll bring back alumni from your college who are currently in law school or who are lawyers now, to bring back and give you a slice of life panel, if you will. So keep an eye out, get on a listserv, talk to the pre-law advisors, because they really are proactive. We work really closely with pre-law advisors, and I've talked to many who have said, oh yeah, I bring students back all the time who are now practicing attorneys, so they can kind of show them what the pathway is like. So look out for that stuff. Maybe a career center, I think, as well.
Mhm. Yeah, Oscar? No, okay, it's fine. That's just so much shit. Oh, no, something talking about, reaching out and contacting too. One of the things that I was afraid, and I regret not doing more of, was actually reaching out to admissions offices. And I didn't reach out to any because I didn't want to be annoying or, bothersome to the admissions offices. But for you all, how do you encourage potential applicants or current applicants to reach out to you if they have more specific questions? Of course, assuming, this is what I tell all students, read the website first. It has a lot of great information. But once you're done there, and if you still have questions, how do you encourage applicants to reach out to you all? Oscar?
Read the website. That's where you should start. And I think that really helps you answer a lot of questions. We have so much information on the websites. Create an account with the Law School Admissions Council, lsac.org. There is a lot of information there that will get you started. But when you're calling specific schools, start off with the website. 100%. That's like the best advice. And then when you call, feel free to talk to any of us. We're all available to answer your questions. We answer them via email. You can reach out to us via email. You can reach out to us by phone. Introduce yourself. Say, I'm XYZ. I'm interested in applying to your program for fall of 2024. And I'm a first-gen student. I have a couple questions after reading your website. That is such a good way to lead into the conversation. You've made a connection. You've identified yourself. You have shown interest in the program. You've done your due diligence by reading the website. I think that will get you right off on the best. You'll give us the best impression, right? And sometimes names stick with us, believe it or not. Oh, I talked to so and so, and they were really professional. They were super courteous. They were super nice. They were super prepared, and that will stick with us through the admission cycle. And so, in the case that you're waitlisted in March or April, and we remember you from positive interactions, that may mean that you get a positive decision once we're ready to make those final decisions. And so always act courteously and always do your research before and that's gonna pay off, hopefully.
Yeah, names stick with us for good reasons and bad reasons, so make sure you're on the good side of things.
Mostly bad, which is not good.
Yeah, because I'm like, oh, that person. No. Or when I see the caller ID and it's the person that calls us every week. It's but Paula or Danielle, do you all have anything else to add to that?
I just want to agree with Oscar. I literally 90% of the phone calls we get, the caller does not give us their name. And they very clearly haven't looked at the website. They're calling, what's your LSAT median and GPA median? It's like we have done a lot of work on our website, so please look there first. The other great reason to look on the website is because many of us have the dates for our recruiting events that Oscar mentioned earlier that we're going to be around. And so maybe you're checking out the website, you're really interested in our school, and you realize we're going to be out there next month. Well, now you have an opportunity to stop by the table, come see one of us. If you're not able to, drive all the way out to visit us wherever we're at, because you have school, because of finances, whatever the case may be, we are coming to you. We want to see you. We want to meet you. And so by looking at our website, getting your CAS account set up so you get our emails, all of these are ways that we can kind of find each other in person.
And virtually, like our school, Golden Gate, we still have a lot of virtual events so that you can
Mhm.
come to see them. And so here's what to circle back to what the question was about, like how much contact is too much, I think is very much in line with if you come to a session, whether it's in person or virtual, and we're talking about a certain subject, that you focus and listen to what we're telling you. Because sometimes I work really closely with CLEO, it's a Council of Legal Education Opportunity, and a variety of us have worked with them in the past. And sometimes students start asking questions about something that is not topic centered, and that really shows that you're not paying attention. And those things that we're telling you are going to answer the questions that you have down the line. And if there's anything that needs clarity, then you'll be able to take your copious notes and ask the questions when the time is right. And I think that's in alignment with everything that was said here about looking at the website, read the emails that have directions on them, like campaign emails, for example, when we're telling you about applying to the school, look at the directions on the application. We have all spent a lot of time making sure that we give you as much information as possible. And if you say, well, there's just so much information there, welcome to law school. You're going to have to read way more than that. So that will kind of help you not over contact admissions, call a lot, or email daily if it's not necessary. And I think that's important too, because, we're building communities here. And don't forget, there are thousands of people that apply to law school every year. And as much as we want you to come to our law school, we know that not everyone is the right fit for our law school. So there are many more people that we don't admit to law school than we admit. And we're molding classes. So we want to make sure you're a good member of our community. And that's something to really take seriously.
Definitely. Danielle, you mentioned earlier that some of the work that you do is focused on first gen. So kind of moving on to the resources that law schools offer first gen students. What are some of the resources? And I'll go through the list with everyone, but Danielle, starting with you, what are the resources that you offer at your law school?
Yeah, it's a trend that I'm very glad to see kind of taking hold nationwide. But over the last few years, a lot of law schools across the country have started dedicating specific resources to first-gen students, whether that be through student orgs or, in our case at Texas Tech, through specific programming. And so a lot of times the programming may look like mentorship opportunities. At Tech, we do mentor matching. All of our first year law students are matched to a second or third year student mentor, but oftentimes we do try to match the first gen 1Ls with first gen second or third year students, also because they request it in the notes. So we do try to do that. We have mixers, we have panels, one coming up again. It's for all of the students in general, but is also very helpful to the first year students. That is a tongue twister. So the second week of classes, we do a panel called Normalizing Your First Week of Law School. And so it's a really nice little panel. Current students are on it, professors, kind of talking about all of the private thoughts that I think a lot of law students have in their first week, like, am I the only one who's not sleeping? Am I the only one who's lost? Am I the only one who doesn't get it? And it's just kind of an hour where we give them food and tell them, like, no, everybody has no idea what's going on, and that's just kind of part of the journey. So programming like that kind of do some empowerment, so mentorship empowerment, and then networking opportunities. So our career and professional development office, they do etiquette dinners, where students can have an opportunity to learn how to sit through a professional dinner, so that if they are in a scenario or a situation like that, it won't be, kind of stressful, like it's their first time. We have presentations on, professional attire for your interview. That might be somebody's first time having to go fully suited to an interview. And what color socks am I supposed to wear? Right? All these questions that you didn't realize you didn't know, and now you don't realize you don't really know who to ask. So there's different programmings focusing on professionalism, focusing on resumes that are geared oftentimes towards the whole class, but are especially beneficial to first-gen students. And like I said, schools across the country are starting to put more emphasis on this type of programming. And so if that is something that's important to you, definitely see, what the school has to offer. If it's not really on the website, ask about it, because I don't know that ours is yet, but it exists. So definitely reaching out and giving you a chance again to make those connections.
Oscar?
Just like Danielle, we have a First to Go program. We actually, this incoming class, we enrolled 35% of our incoming class was first generation college students. So super proud of that. There's a lot of resources. We also have really active affinity-based student organizations, really active, well, now it's called the Latinx Law Student Association. It used to be called La Raza de Loyola. They've made the change, but they offer a lot of awesome networking opportunities and academic support. And so there's so much community at our various law schools. And so if you seek it out, you will find it, I think, at most of our law schools. And so don't be afraid of seeking it out. I know that not all law schools have these sort of opportunities. So you're going to have to do a little bit of extra work to find community and support and resources. But this is where your confidence is supposed to kick in. This is where your research is supposed to kick in. And so you have to seek it out for yourself if it's not readily available.
Paulette?
One of the reasons why I moved from Southern California to the Bay Area was because Golden Gate is a very mission-driven institution. This year, 50% of our students are first-generation college and 96% are first-generation law students. So because we've been able to continue that mission, every year about 80 to 90% of our students are first-generation law, and more than 50 are first generation college, is that we don't necessarily deem things made for first gens. What we've done is kind of recreate all of the support services to really focus to the students that are the majority, which are first gens. So that we do have things like a sharing closet, for example, Danielle and Oscar have really neat programs, especially when they're learning certain etiquette at professional dinners. For us, our students are learning about the way that they dress. And so we have like a sharing closet, we have resume workshops. And so we haven't necessarily deemed anything for that group because we're trying to normalize it in a greater sense. And because so many of our students are self-defining as that. So in a way, I think all of the resources speak to the same thing. Like Danielle said, nobody knows what anybody's doing. Even if you look at a person and say, they sure have it together, in their mind, they're wondering the same thing that you are. So taking advantage of anything that is free at your school, which there are many things, I think is helpful for you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Maybe
Yeah.
and you can help me answer. And I think I know the answer, and I think all of you can agree. When we're saying first generation college, that means that your parents didn't attend college. But if you have an older sibling that attended college, guess what? You're still first generation college.
Mhm.
If your parents attended college in Mexico or Latin America or Asia, or wherever, guess what? You're still first generation college.
I never heard that before.
Really?
No, because you're talking about first generation Americans versus first generation college. And if the parents have college experience, then I don't know.
So for me, my mom went to college in Mexico, but she couldn't help me in my experience here in the United States. She was an immigrant, right? So having that experience in Mexico, she didn't graduate college. She just took a couple of years in Mexico. She couldn't help me with my application process for law school. She couldn't help me with my application process for college. So for me, in my mind, I was a first generation college student. And that's how I envision myself. Now, we might have different opinions, but I'm wondering, I mean, that's I guess a valid opinion, but maybe if your parents are able to, speak fluent English or are able to assist you in the process, then maybe you're not first generation. But for me, it was as if my mom didn't have any college experience.
I think it just depends. Like, let's say we have students who are first generation in the US, but their parents may have been doctors in other countries. I don't know if it's necessarily fair to say that they're first generation college students. They're first generation Americans that are pursuing college, but their families do have I think part of it for me is the perspective.
Mm,
When I'm studying first gen students, is the idea of the perspective in terms of um transitions of wealth, right? Transitions of knowledge of wealth, right? And that's different because of the wealth knowledge they have in terms of pursuing advanced degrees is different than like my grandparents and my parents, right? They don't have that wealth to transfer to me in terms of that experience. And so, you know, so I guess it kind of depends.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of fluid, I guess. And you're
That-
right. Like,
yeah,
mom was not a doctor, so
yeah.
I don't
No,
have
that's how
doctor
we view it.
money.
Like for us, it's very like we don't get many students like that, but the ones that we do, that it depends. Answer of did the parents finish college while they were in the other country? Depending on what they went into, if they were doctors or professors or engineers or something, that's gonna be very different as well. So I think that is the focus, is the transition of wealth of knowledge or financial wealth. I think like that Paulette pointed out, I think that is kind of the focus for us when it comes to that type of student. Danielle,
There was actually a really great discussion on this in one of the pre-law listservs, and it was exactly that. It was a student whose parents had immigrated actually from an English-speaking country and were doctors or something, and were able to put the student into a private school and, gave them the best of all the best of everything, right? Probably able to like hire consultants and stuff. And so they had a very different experience of what we would consider somebody first gen college student who is kind of having to try to figure everything out on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, and at Duke, we actually have two separate student organizations. So we have the First Gen Professionals, which is just the first lawyer in your family, and anyone that qualifies under that can join. But then we also have a new organization that was started last year called First Class that focuses on first gen college and or low income. So it could be either or. And so that is something that, because the issues, or not necessarily issues, but the obstacles that you have to overcome and the things that you have to learn are very different. That is kind of why we have those two separate organizations.
You know, one thing I'll say, having worked at a variety of places and reflecting back on my experiences, I feel like these are wonderful programs for students to take advantage of, but not to continue to be categorized as. Because that continues to put us in the other box. And there's nothing wrong with being a first gen. I'm a first gen college student, a first gen grad student, like great, right? Like, yay. But the fact is, now we've claimed our seat at the table, and we need to use our voice. And because of that, shouldn't allow others to continue othering us. And that's something that's important in the workforce.
Yeah.
Right? As much as comfort as it brings to be able to say like, oh my gosh, can you believe we did this? And then, I have really wonderful discussions with a friend of mine who works at a four-year private college, a liberal arts college. And we always talk about, wow, this is so amazing that we're able to experience this. But how sad that we have to say how amazing it is that we get to experience this, because I'm pretty sure people who have continuing generations of, college doctors, lawyers, whatever, aren't necessarily saying the same thing, right? So that lends itself to a different conversation later. But my point being empowerment, right? To continue to be part of these organizations, to be support for one another, to empower one another, and then have what you need and the motivation to move forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that actually leads me to my next question of, we talk about all the like things that you have to overcome as a first gen student, but how does being a first gen student benefit you in the application process? Or what would you say as far as like, using that experience and saying, this is how me being a first gen student enhances your student body, and this is what you want me. And Oscar, I'll start with you.
I don't know, in this post Supreme Court decision, how it will benefit students. What I can say is that a lot of us are going to, I think most of us are private institutions. I don't think any of us come from schools that have been restricted just yet. What I am going to say, we're going to be offering a lot of opportunity for students to tell us about themselves in optional statements. And so this is an opportunity for you to tell us about your lived experience, including any socioeconomic hardships that you've had, any, if you are a person that's first generation college student. These things I think are important for the committee to know. Whether it will advantage you, I can ask me next year. There is no advantage, I think, at
Yeah.
this in the cycle, but I think it's important for you to tell us this when you are applying to our various law schools.
Yeah. Paula, Daniel?
Do you mean advantage in the application process or advantage as a person advancing in a profession?
I guess both you could apply it to. I was more speaking to like the application process in that, how does me being first gen enhance, because as you said, we're trying to mold classes. And so, that is something that we take into consideration when we're reviewing an application. And that's still going to be a question on the application is, are you first gen college or first gen professional? And something that we're still going to take into consideration. But so for you all, is that something that I think would kind of help as you're trying to build a class? Or if you want to talk about professionalism too, that experience as well.
I mean, for me, what's important to note to you is that part of my dissertation, my dissertation is on supporting first gen law students. And so part of that was an interview process in which I interviewed faculty. And one of the greatest takeaways from interacting with faculty and ASP members was the fact that they find that the presence of first generation law students is crucial to the education of continuing generation students, and that their perspectives, whatever ethnicity, whatever socioeconomic background they are, by virtue of having a new fresh set of eyes into the legal world and bringing forth examples in their lives that are put in cases and hypos, right? I mean, they're like, oh, I had that, someone down the street had that issue, right? Or whatever it is. That the perspective they bring is so important that I think it's to their advantage to continue to pursue law school and identify themselves in some way to showcase their experience and what they're bringing to the classroom. Because we want to continue to diversify. Our experience as humans, at least in the US, is built on varying perspectives. Wherever you lie, we all have a different perspective. And that is important to note so that you can have these conversations that bring to light the voice of others. I mean, that's what political figures are supposed to do, right? Protect us, make decisions for us, etc. So being part of that framework, I find, is important. So in the application process, like Oscar's saying with regard to SCOTUS, I don't know what to say about that right now, but the importance of those voices being in the classroom and therefore being lawyers or whatever you're going to be with your law degree, very crucial in business and our society.
Thank you, Danielle.
I obviously can't say it better than that, so I'll
Yeah,
just say
let's
I agree.
I have nothing
Paulette.
to add to that. No.
With Professor Palafox over
Yeah, I was
here.
gonna say Professor Palafox. I should have been calling you something. Well, something that I think even to this day still affects me. I always joke, but it's true. When Dean Hoy is the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid and Student Affairs here at Duke Law, sometimes he'll email me and he'll just say, "Can you stop by my office, please?" I immediately tense up and I'm like, well, this is the day I'm getting fired. All right, that was my time in admissions. And there's just that kind of insecurity that I still feel. And it's usually like, oh, can you do this real quick? Or can do you know something about this? And it was a super simple, like, common question. And so how do you all, as first gen, or now that you advise first gen, and Paulette, since you did a whole dissertation on first gen law students, how do you advise students that are feeling that sense of inadequacy, or even during the application process, just feeling overwhelmed by the whole thing, because it's a lot, and especially if you're doing it alone. There are definitely moments that I felt during that process, and even while in law school, I was feeling really overwhelmed at times too. So how did you all deal with that, and how do you advise students now that you have been through that? anyone wants, go ahead. Oscar.
Um, it can be overwhelming, I think. And so just remember that you're not the only person that's feeling that way. I think a lot of people are feeling that way. And sometimes people may come in with a lot of confidence, but law school will humble them very quickly. And so just remember that you're not alone in those feelings. Find your community through the various student organizations on campus and ask for help. That's really all you can do. And just push forward. That's it.
Yeah,
I
it's always
agree.
good. Yeah, I was gonna say
Oh,
it's always funny to see how different some people act in that spring semester after their first semester grades come out. But Paula, you have anything else to add? All right.
the
Well,
only thing I would add is just to reach back.
yes.
You know how hard it was for you. You know how overwhelming and scary it all felt. I know how overwhelming and scary my whole admissions application cycle felt. This is my way of reaching back,
Mhm.
kind of trying to humanize and normalize the experience.
Yeah.
It's why I love to see when second and third year students, reach back out to be mentors for first year students so that they can reminisce like, yes, I felt like that. That's totally normal. I got over it. This is how I did it. And just continuing to do that reach back when you graduate law school and you're a lawyer, look back to those 1Ls, those 2Ls, those 3Ls that are graduating and like overwhelmed with life and their law degree. You were there, you got through it. Don't make other people go through it on their own.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. That's the biggest driver for why I chose to leave full-time practice and get into admissions, and why, we're doing this is because for me, I felt like this is the way that I could have the biggest impact on this profession that I really care about and I'm passionate about. Of course, I love practicing and being involved in cases, but this allows me to really give back nationally, and whether, we're not salespeople, so what our goal is to help you find the best fit for you when it comes to your law school, and we want you to be happy, because that means you'll be a happy student, you'll be a happy alum that then gives back, whether it's your time or financially, and so that's something that we're looking for. And so definitely agree with Danielle 100%. If you give back when you have that opportunity, and if you can make it a little bit easier for someone, it makes a huge difference in someone's life. Paulette, Oscar, do you have anything to add about that, or just general advice that you may have for first-gen students as they begin this journey? And
The only thing I'll say is that just like Oscar and Danielle said, everyone's experiencing this, but sometimes you can't get past like, yeah, I know everyone's experiencing it, but this is me. And so I think always take care of your mental health, always take care of your physical health, and like just go out for a walk, push yourself out for 30 minutes to walk. Even to this day, I'm like, I better go outside and take these dogs out. I mean, anything to get you out into fresh air, to give yourself a break away from studying and all of the things that you're doing. And mental health is important. There are studies that say that students who go into graduate programs do have some high rates of depression. And that's because of the overwhelming aspect, especially as first gens going, oh my God, like what is the percentage of people who pursue a master's degree who identify as like Hispanic or Latino? 5%. I mean, it's ridiculous to also feel that pressure that is just there, and maybe you don't feel it, and that's okay too. But take care of your mental health, because that's always important to make sure you can kind of persevere and remotivate yourself.
And stay off Reddit. It's not great for your mental health.
That's a great one.
A lot
Yeah,
of the
no.
information is not super accurate.
Um,
That's when you call one of us.
exactly.
Get it straight
And
from
some
our
of us
offices.
are on Reddit too. So
It's my favorite source of entertainment. No, but like that's what Paulette Paulette was talking about earlier, like with first year students, they don't know what they're talking about. They're first year students too. Same with this. This is even worse because there's random people on the internet that really don't know what they're talking about. So get your information from people that know what they're talking about. It's our job literally to tell you all this information. So feel free to ask. But yeah, no, I completely agree. And with everyone, and that's the biggest thing that I tell students, just make sure that you're making time for yourself, because once you start law school, there's never a moment in your life again where you're just like, I have nothing to do right now. There's always more reading you could do, more work that you could do. That's always going to be there. But you still have to take time for yourself, for the people that you care about, for the things that you care about. so that you have at least somewhat of a balance depending on where you're at in your career, whether it's in law school or after law school. But yeah, no, thank you, all of you, for your time, for your wisdom, for your words. Really appreciate it. I hope everyone that watches this, I'm sure they will appreciate it and learn from it. But yeah, no, thank you again for everything, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you. See you.